this thing on? Anybody here? Hello. Here we go. Yeah, but I'm not, so... So this is from the Portland Mall battle that we had yesterday, and I'm getting an early start on getting it sorted. The next event that it will be needed at will be the next Portland Mall battle, which isn't until mid-next month. But if I don't sort it now, I'll forget about it, and then the day before the event, I'll have to sort it. And I don't want to do that, so I'm sorting it now. Yeah, the event went very, very well. We solved, fixed a couple of kind of logistic issues we had last time. We had twice as many chronographs going. Actually, I think we had 3 times as many chronographs going. We had ones for the outside range for the comp. We had 2 upstairs. So that all went a lot smoother. We also had a lot more ammo available and a better setup for it. Well, turn your mic up. I don't know what to tell you. Audio is the same here as it has been before. Here's the mic. Which mic is it using? I think it's using the that mic. Can I switch? Probably not. Alright. Anyway, I increased the amount of full-length darts we had as loaners by 17 gallons, and I increased the amount of half darts we had available by 37 gallons. So we had a lot more. Loaner darts. We had a lot more new people, first-time people at this event, which was neat. It's cool that we're getting new people showing up to the events. That is always really, really cool. It did mean we had a lot of people with very underpowered blasters compared to what we're used to and compared to what some people had. No, not 37 gallons of half darts. 37 more gallons of half darts. I had 54 gallons altogether. I had 2 27-gallon totes full of half darts, and then 2 17-gallon totes of full-length darts, and then a much smaller quantity of rival. Luckily, there weren't a whole lot of people running high-capacity rival. In fact, I don't think there was anyone running high-capacity rival. We had a bunch of people borrowing Artemises, because I've got 4 Artemises that I loan out. We had lowered the FPS on the inside games, because 150 proved to be a little hot for how close quarters that was, especially when you've got a lot of kids and first-time players, and 150 is a little spicy up close. So we went to 130, which meant a bunch of my loaner blasters were no longer acceptable. Most of my half-dart loaner blasters weren't. I need to get a bunch more like Outlaws and maybe not Nightingales, Venom Pros, and then we should have it covered. Okay, what do we got? Survival Fest, yes, I am looking forward to Survival Fest. I look forward to meeting people. Do feel free to come up and say hello, even if I look grumpy. It'll be my 4th event in 3 weeks, so I'm gonna be a little strung out, but I always love meeting people. Always kind of like, it's so good to meet you. It's like, is it though? Is it? I'm a grumpy old man. How much fun can I be to meet? A lot of dead full-length darts in here. That's somewhat unusual. Boomco in here. I don't think we had any issue with any FVJs. Nobody brought their own full-length darts. And I think my bins have been fairly well vetted at this point. Some of them are really worn out. Why do I what? I'm not covering a screen? I'm not sure what you're talking about. Yeah! Yeah, that's the dubious thing about loaning out blasters, is a lot of people have absolutely no idea how they work and are gonna do inappropriate things with them. So I try not to loan out anything that takes a magazine because they're just too easy to jam. That's why my go-to loaner blaster is... Oh, I spoke too soon. There's an FEJ. My go-to loaner blasters are hammer shots. It's real hard to mess up a hammer shot, not be able to figure out how to use a hammer shot. You put the dart in the front, you pull the hammer back, it fires. It's fairly simple. Yeah, I mean, I could stretch this one if that makes you feel better. Yeah, you'd be surprised how much of a difference the quality of your SD card can make to the whole experience. Cheap SD cards are dubious and problematic. I learned that lesson the hard way a couple of times. Got cheap SD cards that just either didn't work at all or didn't last or fell apart. Wasn't blacked out, it was just empty. Settle down. You'll live. I promise you, you will survive. In your opinion, do you think full-length darts are useless in HVZ? Why would they be useless? They still tag zombies. I run full lengths in my primary. I have, and I will continue to. I don't know where you would get the idea that they're useless. They still tag zombie. Now, unless some club comes out and says half darts don't work on zombies, they're still useful. I've seen people survive to the end of End War armed with nothing but a whiteout Maverick. It has nothing to do with what darts you run. Yes, I know there's lag. But pretending that I don't know that allows me to be a grumpy old man. Best burger. So, if you mean made by somebody else, I honestly have no idea. The favorite that I've ever had is one that I make. No, I take that back. My favorite that I've had made by somebody else was a bison burger in Lewiston, Idaho, at a place called Main Street Grill. That was an absolutely delicious bison burger. I've also had a few in a small pub in Idaho where we're reasonably certain the vast majority of the burger was in fact elk. And so it was, again, also a very gamey, very flavorful burger as opposed to good old ground beef. But I make one that I don't make it very often. I usually make it for my birthday and 4th of July and stuff like that. It's about 1/3 of a pound of beef and 3x3 grid of bacon cooked together into cloth, and then some extra sharp white cheddar and some extra sharp cheddar, and served with a good root beer float. Absolutely heart attack inducing. Takes a year off your life every time you have one. And worth it. Oh, which HVZ? Well, I would have said Maryland Mayhem is probably the best bet, but we don't know what Maryland Mayhem's gonna look like next year. So, Ragnar Oktoberfest is an incredible event. If you're just wanting HVZ, probably Survival Fest, honestly, because that is the whole focus, pretty much, of Survival Fest is HVZ, where Maryland Mayhem and or Ragnar Oktoberfest also do a convention and a tournament and a Nerf war, and so there isn't as much focus on any one part of it, and so all of the aspects are a little watered down to what they would be if the event was purely dedicated to one subject, whether it was if they did just a tournament all weekend long, or they did just Nerf Wars all weekend long, or they do just HVZ all weekend long. You'd be able to dial them up a little bit higher, and so, probably Survival Fest if what you truly want is HVZ. I was also born in Idaho. I was born in Cottonwood, Idaho. Who on earth was running Ultra? In terms of attendance, I don't know anymore. It varies from year to year. Maryland gets a really good turnout. It's in the DC area. There's 3 different Nerf clubs there. You're going to get a lot of people, plus people traveling. War is definitely not what it once was. It used to be pretty much the only event. It was the premier event. It's the one everyone talked about and everyone went to. And it has dropped off significantly, in my understanding. I don't know how big the last couple were. I haven't been to one since 2019. Rag usually has a pretty good turnout. Again, being in California, there's a lot of folk down there. There's plenty of clubs down there. Survival Fest, I would suspect Survival Fest is the smallest. But again, I have absolutely no idea because this will be my first Survival Fest. So that would probably be a question you'd have to reach out to each individual game runner and get their numbers. If If it seems like this bin was unusually high on full-length darts, that's because I think this was originally the full-length dart bin, and people just dumped loose darts into it at the end of the day, rather than... What on earth is that? The half-length bins made it through relatively unscathed. There wasn't a whole lot of detritus in them, and I suspect most of the detritus in them was incidental from the event, just random darts landing in the bin rather than people putting stuff in there after dart sweep. Wackiest? I know someone who still runs, like, Ultimator rockets. They're homemade Ultimator rockets, but they're running those. I do still occasionally see Vortex. We got a couple of people up here in the Pacific Northwest that like running Vortex. Though the one that was heaviest into running the weird stuff has now gotten very heavy into comp and takes things, I suppose, a little bit more seriously. They were on the winning team at Maryland Mayhem, so it's clearly working out for them. We did have a couple of people running Mega XL this weekend fairly heavily. That was pretty cool, which worked well because there were people running shields. So that worked out. And they usually somehow ended up on opposite teams. Come rain or shine, I will be there. I will have a non-electronic loadout. I will have my usual light loadout, just in case the weather decides to be unfriendly towards lipo-powered blasters. Because while the risk is relatively low that anything short of a torrential rain is really going to damage your electronic blaster, my electronic blasters cost hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and I'm not willing to take even that much risk. Especially since I couldn't replace them even if I wanted to. Sportsman. That's the hopper-fed Springer, right? I think I have one. I just never reviewed it because it wasn't... I acquired it rather than it being sent to me for review. If you really want me to review one, by all means, send me one and I'll review it. Are they even still available, though? Kind of... Alright. I think I've got most of the full lengths. Oh, I missed one. Now we start plucking rival. Wasn't there a blaster like the Flip Fury but with four domes? Yes! Doom something. I think. It was one of the Zombie Strike blasters. I cannot remember the name of it now. Doominator. I knew it had Doom in the name somewhere. Am I excited for brand new X-Shot Blaster? Which brand new X-Shot Blaster? I assume you mean the AEB. And yes, I'm looking forward to getting one. Kind of disappointed I wasn't sent one for review. But I have gotten to see it in action because Out of Darts keeps bringing theirs to events. So I have seen it work, and it does seem to work as reliably as any other AEB. Honestly, I have not... the currently commercially available half darts are all relatively the same. It's always going to come down to your blaster. Which darts work well in your blaster, because if you've done any kind of modifications to it, any kind of tuning to it, if you've replaced any of the bits, different darts are going to perform differently. And what might work well in your blaster might not work well in my blaster. They might not even work well if we have the same blaster, but we've done different mods to them. So there is no, this is the best dart, get this dart, it will give you the best results. That's not a thing. Worst, probably, cut down ones. If you're just cutting your own, like cut down Adventure Force waffles, they're great in some, not in others. If you want the most speed, you're probably going to want to go with one of the Dart Zone Bamboos. They tend to have a slightly higher FPS than a standard dart out of the same blaster. But again, some blasters don't like them. Some blasters only like them. Yeah, the ones at Walmart, the ones at Target, whatever you can get, they work fine. That's the beauty. Once upon a time, you had to, order your darts from Worker, and that was the only option, and you only had a handful of them, and it was hard, People spent an inordinate amount of time at the end of the event trying to recover all of their half darts, and now I have 57 gallons of loaner half darts. And yeah, some work better than others, but not enough to say these are the best, in my opinion. So it's actually a couple of different nettings. So, and most of it was here when I moved here. It was netting, it was fence netting that was in the barn. The sides are a much looser, the sides on the front are a much looser net because there aren't darts flying directly at it. The places where there's more likely to have darts coming at it, I've got a slightly tighter net. And then the netting that's actually hanging in my dart catcher to kind of soak up the energy of the dart so they don't bounce back out is the same scaffolding netting that the arena and my range are covered with. It's a scaffolding netting from Home Depot. Very durable stuff. I mean, if you want to get crazy with it, shorts, a t-shirt, an ice vest. Here's something many of you may not know about me. In the past, I got to be Smokey Bear for a summer. And that fur suit in the Idaho summer heat would have been extremely unpleasant. Except the headpiece had fans built into it, and they had an ice vest that you wore, and so it was actually not too bad. I mean, it wasn't comfortable, but, how often do you get to be Smokey Bear? I got to ride fire engines and scare children. It was fabulous. VR makes my motion sickness much, much worse. groundbreaking stuff in the last 5 years. Or 3 years. I have no idea. My brain still thinks last year was 2019. Half darts have taken over. That's just kind of an inevitability. X-Shot's making pro blasters. X-Shot is making pro blasters and good pro blasters. Who would have seen that coming when they first hit the market and were the cheaper than Busby option? Yeah, there's that. Favorite lever action? Probably, oh, see, I would have said the Sentinel, but I've got a really nice modded sling fire that'll actually hit 140. So it's real nice. For 3D printed, probably the slab. Pretty sure it's called the slab. Yeah, every time a new blaster comes out, there's people who complain it's going to break everything. I remember when things like the Nemesis came out and they're like, yeah, no one's ever going to run anything but Rival. It's just going to be a whole bunch of people with Nemesis just hosing the whole field and it's never going to work. And then we got high-powered half-dart blasters that can snipe you and your Nemesis from across the field. And you rarely see them anymore. Honestly, same thing with the Proton Pack. But that's also partly because you can't get the Proton Pack. Hopefully that'll change soon. Though we've been hearing that for months. Trying to get the worst of the half darts removed because they've been beat up a bit. At the very least, I want to get the ones that don't have any heads on them removed. I forgot. I have a second screen just for putting the chat on so I can actually see it. Well, that don't work. One moment. All right. Now I can pop out the chat. All right. Can I bless your dice? I don't feel qualified to bless dice. For that, you're going to need somebody with a stronger ordination than mine. More that I wish I'd gotten more of when they came out. Strifes, hammer shots, even though I've got 100. Probably, but I can't think of any now. Yeah, my dwarf could bless your dice. I'm not him. I'm a mook sorting darts. I will say this. May the probability police always be stuck at a red light. Nerf made more Pro X blasters. What would you have... Oh, I've talked about this loads of times. I would have loved to have seen a long shot X, an Alpha Trooper X, a Rapid Strike X. Those are the ones I would have liked to have seen the most. And the fact that they didn't do it is just baffling. And then their decision to move away from the standard 50 cal dart to try to reassert their monopoly, which is just not going to go the way they think. My Survival Fest loadout. So I'm not planning to do anything fancy. I'm gonna run my usual HVZ light and heavy. So I'll have a pair of hammer shots and an Alpha Trooper if the weather is bad, and then I will have my FTL 3 and my Proton Pack and my Pew Pews if the weather is nice. There is a chance, though, that I will run the light loadout all day anyway, because the mods are really good at scaling the game to your level of play, and I'm not sure I'm up to run a Juggernaut for 3 days. I think I would die. One of the advantages, though, of getting old is that I am capable of realizing I should stop, and stopping. Instead of when I was young and dumb and ran until I broke myself. What is the best thin, powerful battery? Are you looking for a brand name, or you're looking for an Amazon link? What do you want from me? I'm gonna need a lot more information than thin, powerful battery. You looking for 2S, 3S? Are you looking for lithium ion, lithium polymer? What are you doing here? Give us something to work with. I will be arriving at Survival Fest on Thursday, so I will be at Mission 0, which maybe that's when I'll run my super heavy loadout just to say I did. And then run light for the rest of the weekend. Or maybe I'll run the light for that and run the heavy for the rest of the weekend. I haven't decided. I'm playing it by ear. It's my first Survival Fest, so who knows? How do you prefer to carry water? I usually, well, it depends on the loadout again. I do have a Camelback built into my heavy loadout. I also have a water pouch built into my loadout. Just a water bottle pouch that I just carry a water bottle in or a Powerade in. Yeah. I will let you know what I think of... Wait, the X-Shot Long Shot? No, they're fabulous. Yeah, they're ridiculously powerful for how cheap they are and how easily they are to mod. I mean... They cost like, what, $30? And with another $30, you can have them hitting over 200 FPS. And that's just nuts. Though I don't know if you can get those parts where you are, so, it's probably a little bit more difficult for you. Would you do more critical reviews? I would, if something came out that I felt was worthy of being critically reviewed. The N-Series blasters aren't even worth the effort, in my opinion. Elite 2.0 had it coming because there was so much potential there, and they just dropped the ball so hard and went so off the wrong end, and N1 is even further off that end to the point that it's just... I genuinely cannot understand their thought process. It genuinely makes no sense to me. It's out-of-touch capitalists thinking they can continue to be out-of-touch capitalists and have no negative side effects. It's just baffling. How's Ire? Ire is doing just fine, collecting dust behind me. Someday, I may get around to finally doing the full rewire and upping her to lipo and a couple of other things that I wanted to fix. But I don't have any events where I would likely use her other than potentially Afterworlds if I ever went back there. That would be a place that I could actually use Ire in her current state, being mostly black and the power level that it has, because Afterworlds you don't need a powerful blaster. Most of fighting takes place at pretty much point blank range. Most people are running swords, so yeah. Bought a handful of X-Shot long shot mags to keep my car as part of my emergency war attendance kit. Very good idea. The Fury X. Yes, the Fury X is also excellent. Top prime rather than pump grip, though there are, of course, already pump grip kits for it. Do you think Nerf is still a decent brand, or is it not worth buying? So, like, some of their stuff, oddly enough, their Pro line wasn't bad. The Strife Pro X was an absolutely solid blaster, and the fact that it was, came with a rechargeable LiPo battery and hit good numbers and was a good form factor. Everything about the Strife X, you're like, good, okay, yes, Hasbro hitting the ground running with a Pro blaster. They're paying attention. They know they're good. And then they just completely fumbled it after that. The Sender and the Torrent aren't bad blasters. They're just not great blasters. With the Torrent, I think that's the flywheel one, they went to AA's because they needed to get the price down so that they could sell them cheaply on Walmart shelves. Or at least I assume that's what the reason was. It is very, very clear to me that it was originally designed to run on a LiPo. Just the way the internals work, and it's got a lot of problems, all of which are completely solved by rewiring it for LiPo. So I genuinely believe it was supposed to be a LiPo, and then some idiot bean counter somewhere decided, no, we got to get that price down to under 50 or whatever, and the only way to do that was to make it run on AA's. And it doesn't do what it ought to do with that. It doesn't have the current. It doesn't have what it needs to work. And that's just, again, just a fumbling of everything about it. You're like, The Pro line's not supposed to be the thing you sell on Walmart shelves. The Pro line is meant to be a Pro line. It's for, you know, it's not a regular hobby blaster. Why would you try to make it into a regular hobby blaster? It's never gonna work, and it didn't. They really should have followed on with more Pro X blasters. It's weird. It's just weird. And I don't know how long N1's gonna survive. I don't know if that's gonna work out for them. I've heard a lot of folks talk at our events and online about how they got the newest Nerf blaster only to get it home and discover it doesn't work with their existing darts. And that didn't make any sense. Why would you do that? It would be obvious when you buy a Mega XL blaster or a Mega blaster or a Vortex blaster that this is going to use different darts, but it isn't that obvious with the N1 line. It looks like, oh, these are regular Nerf blasters. They should work with our regular darts. But no. No. I mean, it's wild to watch Hasbro Boomco themselves. It's, Boomco darts were superior in pretty much every way to the 50 caliber darts. They were more durable, they were more accurate, they had longer range, but they weren't cross compatible. And ultimately that is what killed them, I believe, because they weren't better enough to get the entire hobby to abandon regular darts and switch to them. And that's what you would need to shift the paradigm that much. If you wanted to get everyone to abandon 50 cal darts, you're going to have to come out with a dart that is twice as good. And then people might be willing to do it. But N1 darts aren't any better. So why would we do that? Alright. A lot of trash out of that one. A lot of bad darts. Oh, wait, no, you're a Boomco straw. You're not bad, you're just tragic. A couple of shells? I'm not sure what they're shells to, though. I'm not familiar with that shell design. Alright, where is my other... Alright, what is my favorite Lego theme? Ooh. See, that is a toss-up between Pirate and Castle. And I've never really truly decided which I liked more. I got into Castle first because when I first got into Lego, Pirate didn't exist yet. Pirate was a new thing when I was just at the age to get lots of Lego, so it worked out well for me. But ultimately, I think I'd probably still end up back at my Castle roots at the end of the day. What even happened to Boomco? It just closed down. Wasn't selling. I think it was Mattel. Mattel can soak up a bad product line. They are enormous. It's like Hasbro. That's the problem. Is do I have any Captain Metalbeard stuff? Yeah, I've got one Captain Metalbeard fig that someone sent me, I think. Did you ever get around to running a D&D or castle? No. No, that's what I originally designed it around, was to be like a modular for an adventuring party kind of thing, with all the everywhere in the castle actually being accessible and having staircases or secret passageways or tunnels or whatever. And it all came apart in sections, so you could only see the parts you were supposed to see, and never got around to it. Probably because I've still never fully finished the castle. And I probably never will. It's one of those projects I'll be tinkering on my entire life. And it'll just get bigger and bigger and more complicated. There are some cool new parts I need to get. They have some little gray gargoyles. And I need to get some of them gargoyles to decorate my my crypts and my cathedral and... yeah, bike ammo. That was a fun episode. Really? See, I'd heard there was some Lego that was very brittle. There was an era there where the dark red and the brown would just shatter if you looked at it funny. I hadn't heard about the ball joints having the same problem, though that was from the same era, so that does make sense. What triggers? Speckled black bricks? Probably, because I don't know what you're talking about, so they must be rare. Lime joints. Interesting. Yeah, probably again because it was a new color and they hadn't worked out what the dye was going to do to the plastic. It's interesting how some plastics become more brittle, like the all transparent plastics, especially like the plastic for the clear and the Sonic Nerf blasters are much more brittle and more prone to cracking. Certain filaments, glossy filaments and the translucent filaments also are more brittle and don't adhere as well, and people discover that the hard way when they print a blaster out of it and some load-bearing part just snaps in half even though it wouldn't with normal filament. Yes, gold plastic. Yeah, I had a couple of the gold Mavericks from whatever TV show that was from, and one of them fell off a shelf and hit the ground and just turned into powder. Yes, I have plenty of the weighted bricks, the 2x6x2 weighted bricks. I've got quite a few of them. One of these days I'm going to use them. Skylanders, that's what it is. One of these days I'll get around to using that weighted brick to build an actual functional Lego trebuchet. That doesn't surprise me. Hasbro being cheap. It is really baffling that we've reached a point that Hasbro is the cheap brand. Hasbro's the brand that's got the proprietary ammo and their their QR is poor and I remember when, it was Nerf or nothing and their stuff was good. The N-Strike line, the N-Strike Elite line were great. And, we made fun of Busby and Boomco and all these other brands that trying to muscle in on Hasbro and we're never going to be as good as, and now it's completely the opposite. And it's tragic to see. The deprivations of late-stage capitalism. Alright. Now I got 3 of these to go through. I don't know that I'm going to make it through all of them in one sitting. But I'll get a good start. Yeah, Lego is in a weird place right now. Their build qualities are excellent, but their prices are getting out of hand. And so it's harder and harder and harder to not turn to the off-brand stuff because the off-brand quality had gotten so good that you really couldn't tell. And a lot of the off-brand stuff, they were making things that Lego never made. And so at that point, you don't have to feel bad about, copyright and patent infringement because they're not making exact copies of Lego sets that are in the store. That I've always avoided because that actually seriously hurts Lego's bottom line. But when they're making copies of either old sets that Lego doesn't make anymore or just entirely new stuff, that's a different matter. And when the quality is good enough that you can't tell the difference unless you're looking really, really close, why not? Lego needs to quit faffing about and just put out a whole new pirate line and a whole new castle line. Quit doing all of this IP stuff. Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Enough of that. Give us regular castle. Pirates of the Caribbean is gone and done. Give us regular pirate again. You won't have to pay the IP licenses and we can get good sets. We are getting new factions at least. They've finally given us four new factions this year. And I will have fun building armies with them. Yeah, Bionicle would actually be another good one for them to re-release because, again, it's in-house. There's no IP. They're not going to lose money being bled out by the Mouse or Marvel or whoever else. But what do I know? Yeah, 2 new factions in the Gumball Machine, and you get 2 of each in the Gumball Machine. Those are the factions I'm actually really excited about, because the Griffins are cool looking. It's a good color scheme. And the Krakens, okay, now I get to make sea monsters, and I get to basically make a fantasy Viking faction, and that's very cool. You know, the Ironborn, essentially. I have no idea where I'm going to go with that. I've got a number of ideas. The other 2 that they came out with was a black snake on a yellow background, but it doesn't have... There only comes with 1 figure, and he doesn't have the faction on his chest, on his torso. So I'm not sure how you... Army building that one will be difficult. The other one is a white horse on a blue background, and you get a couple of them, plus the king has a different torso. So that's a solid faction to build on there. And since it's non-IP, it should show up on the Pick-a-Brick wall, on the online Pick-a-Brick. So army building should be easy once people settle down and you can actually get them, because they're going to get bought out for months before they're finally readily available. But they will be, just like the Wolfpack torsos were sold out forever, and the Viking torsos were sold out forever. The Black Falcons and the Lion Knights were sold out forever, and eventually people get their fill and other people can finally get some. What I'm really tempted to do, because I want to build my factions in even numbers, I don't want 27 factions. I currently have 24, and really not sure I can make a whole faction using the snake unless there's more stuff coming. But with the white horses, what I will probably build as a counter to them will be a Rohan faction, where it's white horses on a green background. And I'll have 2 heavily cavalry-based factions that are horse-themed. And then with the Krakens, I'll probably lean into the concept of Vikings. And see what I can do with that. Have you ever had a model train? No. I avoid model train like the plague. I fear I would like it too much. Same reason, one of the reasons I don't drink alcohol. I think I would like it too much. I've already lost one friend to it. Lance, Sergeant Deplorable, has gone down the model train road. And there is no saving him now, but it sure does make him happy. So that's cool to see. And he's built some really cool stuff. And that's the thing, is there's just so much you can do with model trains. But I don't have room. That's the big problem with model trains, is they take a lot of room to set up a proper train diorama, and I just don't have room. Did you ever figure out how to fix the regulators? Yeah, there's a replacement internals kit from Worker. Get the replacement internals kit and replace the internals. Either that or just gut the internals and rewire it as a Hyperfire. It'll be full auto only, but it'll work. But if the board goes bad, the only thing you can do is replace the board. Yeah, Lego in general takes up a lot of room. Yeah, city dioramas, my whole castle diorama, my pirate diorama. I'd love to have a space diorama, but that would take up even more space, and I just don't have the room for it. When I was younger, I had the advantage of not having enough Lego to do all 3 of the series I liked at once. So I could either do castle, I could do pirate, or I could do space. But I couldn't do all 3 at once because I just didn't have the brick. And so it took up a lot less space, because I'd build a big castle thing and I'd love it for a while, and that's what I would do. And then I'd get bored with castle and I'd completely tear it down and I'd build a huge pirate thing. And then I'd get bored with that and I'd tear it all apart and I'd do a big space thing. And then I'd get bored with that and I'd go back to castle. And so it all took up the same space. And now I've got enough that I can do it all at once, and it's a problem. Yeah, I have a lot of hammer shots. Last time I calculated it, I was coming close to, if not having exceeded, 100 hammer shots, which is, you would think, an unnecessary amount of hammer shots, but I use them. McDonald's collecting. That's getting weird. No, I've never collected the Pokemon cards or Yu-Gi-Oh cards or any other. Well, the one pseudo collectible card game that I ever played was WizKids Pirates, which did involve cards, but you punched out the parts of the ships and then assembled little ships from the parts of the cards, and then you battled it out. But it came in blind packs, similar to the way regular collectible cards do, and so is still very expensive. I do still have all of that. I haven't played it in many, many years, but I do still have it. I had some fairly impressive fleets at one point, or at least I thought they were impressive. Didn't have enough people to play with to ever really get a good challenge to see if what I had built was actually any good. Obviously, I'm big into Nerf. Obviously, you know I'm big into Lego. I do collect coins, foreign coins especially, and bicentennial coins. I have a fairly decent bicentennial coin collection at this point. I don't know what really qualifies as a big bicentennial coin collection. And root beers. I collect root beers, and you're probably aware of that as well. Just this weekend, I actually did manage to pick up another root beer I didn't have. I picked up Rocket Fizz Root Beer Float, which is just a root beer that had a lot of vanilla flavor in it. So it had that end of the root beer float flavor and was actually quite good. I had regular Rocket Fizz, but I hadn't had the Rocket Fizz Root Beer Float. So I added that to the collection, bringing me up to 120. I have 120 in my collection right now. And I should have at least 3 more by the end of Survival Fest. I think it's dead. I don't think... It's gone, Jim. Assuming Al the Geek remembers to bring the ones that I left at his place. Locks and handcuffs. That's a neat one. Yeah, I do sometimes use the term, foam flinging. I definitely don't use like Dart Soft or some of the other ones that people have proposed. There has been discussion of that in the hobby because Nerf is a brand name, but it is so completely ubiquitous it would be difficult to eliminate from the zeitgeist. And all the other terms that people tried just didn't resonate. With me, particularly. Dart Tag isn't a bad one, but that also... Nerf kind of Had that for a long time. Yeah, exactly. Kleenex, Velcro, Lego, for that matter. It's just kind of amusing that at this point, within our parts of the hobby, in the general foam flinging world at large, Hasbro is still the giant. Nerf is still the biggest brand by a large margin. It's just within the community that we play in, which is a remarkably small community, all things considering. Hasbro is no longer the primary brand that anyone uses. You got more people using 3D printed blasters at like Borst than you have people running anything that was actually made by Hasbro. So it really isn't the fitting term anymore. I need to, and maybe I'll remember to today, make a post where I actually publish the list of root beers that I have had, and I also have the list of ones that I know about that I haven't had, so that if people want to get in on that button challenge and get themselves a I Gave Captain Xavier root beer button, you know which ones to keep an eye on. Because a lot of root beers are a local thing only. You know, the local microbrewery sells them to the local grocery store, and there is nowhere online you can get them, and they don't distribute them very far and wide. But those are the fun ones. The weekend after Survival Fest, I'm taking a personal trip to Salt Lake City to visit Sergeant Deplorable, who's currently deployed there for work. And as it turns out, Salt Lake City is home to the last root beer store in America. So I did not find that out until I'd already decided to make the trip. That was just a cool coincidence. And hopefully they will have a few that I don't have. It'd be really tragic if I went all the way to the root beer store and they didn't have anything I hadn't already had. Let's see, what do we got? Tomsky. Oh, wait, that's the person's name. What are you recommending? Yes, exactly. I've got it all set up on a Google Sheets. And that's what I'll publish, is just publish the link so anybody can look at it. And they can see it as I update it. And yes, if you mail me a root beer I have not had, I will mail you a button. People have mailed me all manner of root beers before. That's kind of how I got to the point of actually starting to collect the bottles. You know, I've never actually tried to grade root beers by origin. And that's actually a really interesting question, is there is a fairly significant difference from one root beer to another. There can be. Many are very similar because they generally use a couple of different things to flavor root beer. And so you'll get ones that are strong on one or the other, and they'll kind of have a similar flavor pattern to them. But it never actually occurred to me that might be a regional thing. That like the Deep South puts a lot more anise in their root beer, or the Pacific Northwest tends to put more wintergreen in their root beer, or something like that. I've never looked into that. I've yet to actually sit down and read any of the various root beer blogs. There are indeed root beer blogs on the internet where people have posted their takes on various root beers because they feel like that's neat. And I only recently actually started adding notes to my list of ones that I've collected describing the flavors. And part of the problem I've run into is I don't know how to identify the flavors. Like, no, this has a flavor, but I don't know what it is. I don't know how to describe it. Oh, this is... Some of them I figured out, like, okay, yeah, that's clearly anise. That's that licorice flavor. And, okay, yeah, there's that wintergreen flavor that some root beers have. And obviously some are heavy on the vanilla, and that's one I'm familiar with. But there's others where it's like I don't know how to identify which ones have, like, sassafras over whatever else, or, you know. I don't know the words. I haven't gotten quite that sommelier-ish. Cooper Cave. I don't think I've ever had. Is that do they make a root beer? Or do they just make colas? Yeah, I discovered when I traveled to Europe that root beer is not particularly popular in Europe. The couple of times that people who had been from Europe that had tried root beer in America that I knew of said it was too sweet. And oddly, I had never thought of root beer as being particularly sweet, but... Another rumor that I'd heard, and I don't know how much truth there is in it anymore, is that since the root that it's made out of, where the root name comes from, was originally taken back to Europe for medicinal purposes, and to this day they put that flavor in things like cough syrup and medicine. And so, as a result, nobody wants to drink something that tastes like cough syrup. Virgil's is a good one. I used to have a mini keg of Virgil's that I was given that I drank out of for years before it finally ran out. Virgil's is a good one. $19.19 root beer. I don't believe I've had that one. Does it come in a bottle or is it only cans? More Ultra. Off to work with you. Speaking of all this root beer, I should go get a drink. I have been out here a while. I'll finish up this tray and go grab something. Another random shell. that I don't know what it's to. Lake George? Hooray! My primary for HVZ is my FTL3. Because I have yet to find something better. I kind of wish it took half darts. And I'm actually kind of tempted to modify the pusher and see if I can't make a hybrid pusher that can fire either full lengths or half lengths. Or just convert the pusher to half lengths and throw in an adapter. But it currently runs full length darts because at the time I still wanted to run full length darts for HVZ. Now I'd kind of like to switch to half darts, just kind of. I do like that in my loadout I carry full length darts, half lengths, and rival, which means I can borrow ammo from anyone and I can lend ammo to anyone, and that's a valuable ability in some situations. But as far as performance and reliability, I've yet to find anything better than an FTL3. I've gotten a couple in the hopes. I got an SBF in the hopes that maybe it would be solid enough and reliable enough that I would be willing to switch. But I ran it twice, and it jammed more times in those two games than my FTL3 has in 6 years. So it failed the reliability test. And I got the Stinger in the hopes that it would be an acceptable half dart replacement. And I got about 10 mags through it before I blew the flywheels, or blew one of the flywheels. I've got it working now, but until it has demonstrated itself to be reliable, I'm not going to depend on it for something like HVZ, because in HVZ, you make one mistake, your blaster jams once, you have one malfunction, and you're a zombie. And yeah, you only get the one failure. And so I don't want that failure to be the result of my blaster malfunctioning. So reliability is, to me, the most important quality for an HVZ blaster. It doesn't need to have long range. The zombies come to you. It doesn't need to hit hard. HVZ is played at point blank range. It doesn't need to be... doesn't need a high rate of fire. One tag per zombie in most cases. What it needs to be is it needs to be reliable, and it needs to be relatively accurate at 20 feet. At most, accurate to 20 feet. And I've yet to get anything that outperforms my FTL3. So, what about the Mark III? Well, most HVZs don't allow humans to have melee, so it doesn't really do you any good. If an HVZ allows melee, I 100% carry a melee. In fact, I might actually primary a melee, because the melee doesn't run out of darts. The melee doesn't jam. The melee works. But I also don't like the zombies getting that close to me. I would rather tag them before they're close enough for me to stab. Yes! Socks. a lot of HVZs, a sock is an absolute must because even Maryland UMBC that typically doesn't have any kind of special ammo requirements. This game they did. They had special zombies that could only be taken out by socks. That was the only kind of special ammo they went with. And having socks on me saved me several times. And an awful lot of people didn't have socks and got taken out because doesn't matter how many times you shoot that vested zombie, if you don't have a sock, they're just going to walk right through it and tag you. But we got really good at calling it out, you know, having your socks ready, keeping an eye on the ones that needed socks, and making sure that there was someone there with a sock to take them out when the time came. But other places do have even more requirements. Like Survival Fest has all kinds of ammo requirements for various creatures. So having something that can work on them is a must. Yeah, that is the nice thing about socks as a special ammo type is anyone can find socks. You can go to Goodwill and get a cheap bag of socks. You can just... Not a problem. Whereas if you have, like, Demolisher rockets as a special ammo type, some folk are going to have a hard time coming up with Demolisher rockets. Even Mega and Mega XL at this point are getting harder and harder to find in the wild. And that may be a problem in a couple of years of, okay, nobody's making special ammos anymore because Hasbro can't be bothered and nobody else was willing to pick it up. And, well, then what do we do? What are other memorable throwables other than socks? So I've used stress balls. I've had stress ball brains. I've had stress ball grenades. I've had water toy grenades where they're basically a sponge in a cloth shell. So you soak them full of water and you throw them at someone and it, you know, gets them wet but doesn't explode. It's a reusable water balloon basically. I had some of those. That's actually the same thing that I had for Maryland Mayhem, except they weren't grenade-shaped. They were just ball-shaped, and I didn't soak them, but it was just a foam ball inside of a cloth, which they didn't throw particularly well, but I wasn't throwing them particularly far. I waited until the zombie got real close, and I wasn't going to miss, and just tossed it at him. Other throwables... That's all I'm coming up with. Yeah, so even Nerf. At one point, they were so close to going down the right path. Because for the longest time, they refused to acknowledge that HVZ was even a thing. They didn't endorse it. They didn't want to talk about it. They didn't want to acknowledge it at all. And then somebody else did. Someone else, I think it was either Laramie or Busby or... Where are mine? There's one. Somebody came out. Who is it? Toys R Us. Toys R Us came out with an official Humans vs. Zombies blaster. Said Humans vs. Zombies on it and everything. And suddenly... we had the Zombie Strike line. And while most of the Zombie Strike blasters weren't actually good HVZ blasters, they were just vaguely apocalypse-y themed, but they weren't actually particularly good for HVZ. The sling fire wasn't bad because it could be used one-handed. The hammer shot is still one of the best because it can be used one-handed. But a lot of the other ones they just weren't good for HVZ. But that wasn't the point. They did make throwables. They made a bunch of just random, again, post-apocalyptic throwables. Dynamite in a football, a half brick, a gear, a little nuclear bomb-looking thing. And those are all perfectly acceptable. They were perfectly good throwables for HVZ. I don't think there's any club that wouldn't have allowed them. And you're like, all right, you're right there. You're there. You're doing something right. And then they don't do it anymore. You're like, ugh. There's one shot that I can remember. It was in one of our earliest HVZs that we did when we were at the University of Idaho, right after I'd graduated. And I was out there with my lieutenant, though I don't think he was a lieutenant yet at the time. And I had a Stampede, and he had a Raven, both at the time completely unmodded. So you're looking at, end strike numbers, firing lousy darts. And we'd confronted a group of zombies, and we'd taken out all but one of them, and the last one decided to run for it. And it was way out of range for me, and it should have been out of range for the lieutenant, but just on a whim, he decided to go for it, and he arcs this shot. There was wind. It was all kinds of things. He arcs it, had to have been a 45 degrees, arcs it like 25 degrees out, shoots it, and it just beautifully arcs, and the wind brings it right into the zombie's back. And a lot of people saw it and were all very shocked that he pulled that shot off. It was pretty cool. I was impressed. He was impressed. The zombie was very confused. Because he looked back and he was like, there's no way it could have been either of them, and we're both pretending like we didn't see anything. Pretty sure this is not a legal ammo type. Kind of looks like it. The last nerf for the Portland War, the area that we play in also is used as a wood shop, so it's not entirely surprising that a nail ended up in the dart bin. It probably just got swept up when we did the dart sweep. Why not just repost the comment here? Live stream. Chat away. We should just modify all Mega Blasters down to micros and make them pistol shotgun-like things. No, I mean, we do that a lot. We also have a lot of shell blasters that are shotguns these days that can take a variety of different ammo types, which is really cool. Yeah. Yeah, the Desperado is a fun dual wheel just because of the way the double action works. It's just fun. It's like we've had those kinds of blasters before. They're not exactly new. Hasbro had a couple of them through the years, but they were never great, and they were always kind of, with the exception of like the Snapfire 8. I think that one was cool, but it also had a fragile mechanism that would break out over in time. And then they had like the Nail Biter, which again was awkward, and the Void Caster, again awkward, and the I think that was it called the Dart Fire was the one that was double action but was also a squirt gun. But none of them were as svelte or as compact as the Desperado, which is just a fabulous little 6-round pistol with that double action system. It's just fun to clack, 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 clack. Just neat. Did he ever come back with a question from the Rip Beer chat? Doesn't look like it. What blasters do I not have that I want? Honestly, I don't know that there are any. I don't have an Inverted Scales or a Sweetheart Storm, so there's a couple of the newer AEGs that I don't have, AEBs, that I wouldn't mind having just because AEBs are fun. Yeah, no, the original Hyperfire was top prime. And then the later Hyperfire was battery powered, flywheel. Can you send a pony keg of root beer to my P.O. box? Absolutely, you can mail me root beer. That would be awesome. Do I have a crossbow? Yeah, I've got a bunch of crossbows. And I've got, like, proper crossbows, not, like, Nerf crossbows. I've got one that fires ultra so well, it is upsetting. It is genuinely annoying how well it fires hyper darts. Or not hyper, ultra. It annoys me how well it shoots them. Well, that's okay. Actually, you know what? Somebody brought it up. Yes, there is one blaster that I don't have that I want, and it is the Slingfire DX400. It's from like 2000, 2001. And it's ridiculously rare. It wasn't well received. It had a limited release. Somebody recently found one at a Goodwill and gave it to Wallcom, which is good because he has a more complete collection than I had, so I'm glad he got the first one. But I would love to get the second one if anyone ever finds one. I have probably passed one at a Goodwill more than once and just didn't recognize it because it doesn't look like a Nerf blaster. It looks like some cheap dollar store thing. And I would love to get one. You know, if you really want to send me gray variants, I would be kind of interested to compare them just to see how much of a difference it really is. So, sure. I'd also be curious, like, if I just swap the springs, if that is the only difference is the spring strength, or if they found other ways of nerfing the Nerf. Yeah, you should see my dual Dianas. They're pretty tricked out now, too. The vintage yellow slingshot. Do I have a vintage yellow slingshot? I don't know. Got a black one. I don't know if I have a yellow one. Right, I think I have filled the first half dart container. I think I've filled the first full length bin. Yup. Rotate. Well, there might be a little more room in here. We can get another gallon or two in. There. That's probably enough. All right. Yeah, that's kind of what I've discovered about most of the places I've tried to find root beer online. I found a few where for some reason the shipping was ridiculously cheap, and I'm still slightly baffled by it. But at others, yeah, it's twice, the shipping is twice the cost of the root beer, and you're like, that's not worth it. I'm not going to pay $50 shipping for $20 worth of root beer. That's just not happening. But in other cases, yeah, I got, 10 bottles of root beer and the shipping was $8. I don't know, or 13 bottles of root beer and the shipping was $14. One of those bottles broke, tragically. But 1 out of 23 isn't bad for, given how cheap the shipping was. The shipping would probably be more. I would expect them to ship it better, pack it better. I will try to have to try to find the 1919. That is one I don't think I've had. Detritus. Well, I've got Stewart's. We get Stewart's around here. We can buy in the bottle. I actually have I think I've got Stewart's Orange Cream as well. Because America is big enough with enough diverse cultures, we eat just about everything. I mean, gators, possums. My sister collects roadkill. Help. I got 2 more hampers, but I think I need a break. So I'll go. And I will probably finish up the rest of the sorting maybe tomorrow. It's Memorial Day. I don't got anywhere to be. I think I'll get a drink. Maybe take a nap. Nap sounds real nice. Go get harassed by Swamp Cat. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope to see those of you that are going to be at Survival Fest. I hope to see the rest of you at some point. Thank you for watching.